Part 78. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 771. Chapter 771. My parents are here, so I won't travel far. Okay, thank you, princess. This time, Lao He did not refuse. They quickly returned to the second village, and in the time it took to have a meal, they gathered a dozen veterans. These veterans, some lost half their palms, some lost their ears, and some were blind in one eye. Anyway, I didn't delay my trip, jumped on the horse, and set off in a hurry with Lao He and the others. In the yard of Li's house, Brother Cat had eaten and drank enough. He wanted to talk to his family about what he had seen on the road, but his grandma sent him to sleep. Jiyan chased and brought a bowl of soothing tea to her brother, hoping that he would sleep more soundly. As a result, I heard the sound of Hulu Mountain when I entered the door. Needless to say, because of her, my brothers once again had to worry and suffer. 2 days later, Lao He and others returned with the convoy. Because he was worried about the princess's condition, the convoy also traveled day and night, so it was only more than 200 miles behind. As we approach Zindu, the road is much smoother and we will soon reach home. People in the village came out to watch the fun and offered their hands to help carry things. Ganzhou Prefecture is very poor, but it is rich in many good things. This time Lao He and the others brought a lot of good medicinal materials, such as Kodano size pilosula, lily, angelica root, astragalus root, etc., all packed in sacks. I also bought a lot of dried daylilies, red dates, and even local white melons and peaches. Unfortunately, no matter how careful I was, half of them were lost on the road. But the good news is not too distressing, because if you have seeds, you are not afraid. If you throw them into a space nursery, you can grow more and the quality will be better. Just in time, she felt that it was a bit monotonous to always grow jade melons and golden fruits in the village. Add white melons and peaches next year, money will definitely flow in like water. In addition, Lao He and others also bought several bags of Dahongbao and Sichuan peppercorns, 100 kilograms of yak jerky, and more than a dozen jars of Longshan tea. Among them, the most eye-catching ones are the 3 sets of luminous cups. This luminous cup is a jade carving that is a specialty of Ganzhou Prefecture. It is deep blue in color and has beautiful lines. At night, add wine, and it will be dazzling and beautiful. Every year, this luminous cup is also one of the tributes. There was also a set of rewards given to the Li family by the palace before. Now it is kept in the Earl's mansion, and is only used occasionally when entertaining guests. Lao He brought back these 3 sets. They were not produced by official workshops, but were carefully carved by famous local jade craftsmen. Jiyan played with it for a while and then put it away. In the future, when giving gifts at home, you can make a big item and add it to the gift list. After Lao He and others had just settled down, the dried yak was distributed among the villagers to eat freshly, and Li Zhensheng also brought the fleet back. Obviously, he was also anxious, fearing that he would not be able to catch up with the birth of his great-nephew. Li Laoer and Jiaran took their men and went to the military camp wharf to greet them, taking along 2 carts of jade melons. Ho Ye, Li Laosi and Zhang Cheng are all on the northern expedition. Now Li Yong and several generals who have followed the Ho Ye for many years are guarding the camp. Everyone was very happy when they saw the jade melon sent by the Li family. Li Zhensheng also sent hundreds of kilograms of sea fish to the cook camp to add food to the soldiers who stayed behind. Everyone in the military camp was also happy and lent the dock to the Li family's fleet. The pier at Zindu was crowded with too many fleets. Occasionally, someone would ask someone to unload and dock at the military camp wharf. These people will also send some food to the military camp, but only to a few generals, and never take the soldiers seriously. Only the Li family, no matter what they send, the generals will not be left behind. Perhaps every time, everyone doesn't get much, just a piece of jade melon or a piece of fish. But they were happy. Because this is respect and recognition of their hard work. When it gets dark, the stewards are left to slowly unload and transport the goods. Li Zhensheng, Li Laoer and Jiaran rushed back to Sujintan. The Li family yard was brightly lit, and Mrs. Li stood under the big tree at the entrance of the village, looking and waiting. Tao Hongying and Zhao Yuru tried to persuade him several times, but they couldn't persuade him to go back, so they went to shout good news. Jiyan brought a plate of grapes and walked to her grandma. Seeing that she was looking ahead without any notice, she couldn't help but sigh. My parents are not traveling far away, probably because of this. When you get older and have a child or grandchild outside, the elderly can't help but think about them. Uncle, that's all. Although he goes to Guangzhou twice a year, he always comes back. But the third brother Ji has not come back for 3 years, and there is no news about Jiaxi and Jian. Their lives are unknown. Grandma is so looking forward to it, not only for her uncle to come back safely, but also for news about her grandchildren. Jian stepped forward and pulled her grandma to sit on the big rock under the tree. While making jokes to make grandma happy, she peeled the grape skins and put them into grandma's mouth. Until the moon was at the top of the sky, the carriage finally came back. Li Zhensheng got out of the car and saw his old lady. He was about to kneel down, but the old lady helped him up. The old lady looked behind him eagerly and asked, "Where is Ji Yi? Where is Jiaxi and Jian? No one has come back." Everyone felt sad when they heard this. Li Zhensheng even lowered his head in shame. "Mom, this is the time when the Japanese pirates are rampant. Ji Yi can't leave and won't come back. As for my family, I wish my family is safe." He did not continue speaking, but everyone understood. The light in old Mrs. Li's eyes quickly dimmed, and she steeled herself to deal with it. "Ah, I'm confused. The children have their own business, so if they don't come back, they won't come back. Maybe they'll all get back together during the Chinese New Year." Jiyan quickly said, "Grandma guessed it right, my third brother is busy at this time and will definitely come back during the Chinese New Year. As for my fourth and fifth brothers, they are the most naughty. They may be hiding somewhere to hold back their big moves, hoping to surprise Grandma." Mrs. Li thought about it and realized that this was really possible, so the smile on her face grew a little brighter. The two of them are the most naughty, and they got into trouble a lot when they were young. Not to mention anything else, when we first arrived at Broken Gold Beach, we almost roasted Funiuer on the stone slab. I went to pick up the gooses and was chased around by the goose, not to mention how annoying it was. Old Mrs. Li unceremoniously revealed her grandson's shortcomings, causing everyone to laugh and crowd around her as they walked into the courtyard. As a result, Chengxia rushed out in a panic and shouted loudly when he kicked in and out of the door. "Old madam, Our Lady is giving birth, she's giving birth. Oh, Wanner is about to give birth, hurry, go find Po Wen." Mrs. Li no longer cared about her two careless grandchildren and ran to the backyard to prepare for her great-grandson who was about to arrive. Tao Hongying and Zhao Yuru were also busy, boiling water and preparing scissors and clean cloth towels. The most important thing is that we invited Dr. Zhang to take charge. Jiaran still looked calm as usual, his face turned pale in a hurry, and he was wandering outside the window. Wanner is the first child, so he will definitely not be born very quickly. He is destined to suffer a lot. But when Tao Hongying and Zhao Yuru saw him, they didn't persuade him to rest. After all, Wanner was in the house going through for his blood, so it was right for him to be worried and anxious. "Jiyan feels sorry for my brother who has a busy day and still has to suffer like this." So she found a stool for her eldest brother and brought a pot of herbal tea. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 772. Chapter 772. More joy upon joy. Tao Hongying saw her and kicked her out by her collar. You are a little girl and you are getting involved in something. Hurry up to the front yard. Jiyan ran away quickly. Sure enough, Wanner's birth was very difficult. The reason is quite obvious. The Li family eats and drinks very well, and their children are relatively older. It wasn't until daylight brightened that a fat boy weighing 8 pounds came into the world screaming. Everyone followed Xian Xian and stayed up all night. At this moment, we finally won. Old Mrs. Li looked tired and carried her great-grandson to the front yard to present the treasure to everyone. Look, this is Jiaran's son, he's so good-looking and has a big forehead, he will definitely be the #1 scholar in the future. I just made his mother suffer a lot, but I tortured Wanner badly. Li Laoer's eyes were red with excitement. This is his eldest grandson. He rubbed his hands, hesitated for a long time, then hugged her carefully, and then hurriedly handed it back to his mother. Li Zhensheng laughed and said, "This boy is lucky. He just waited until this morning to come out and celebrate his birthday in the same month and day as Jiyan." Everyone was stunned for a moment, and after careful calculation, they found that it was really the case, so they all laughed. "Oh, it's true, this kid stretched out all night, probably just for this reason. Smart boy, he knows that sharing his aunt's birthday has many benefits." Jiyan went to the space to sleep for a few hours in the middle of the night and was very energetic now. She hugged her little nephew, who had the same birthday as her, and she liked it so much that she urged, "Grandma, can you give me a nickname for my nephew?" Mrs. Li was tired after a long night, and she really didn't have any good ideas, so she said casually, "You gave Xing Xing his nickname, now you can give this kid another one." Jiyan thought about it carefully, and it seemed that the eldest brother and sister-in-law had never discussed what nickname to give the child. She did not think that he was taking the spotlight, so she said, "This kid weighed 8 pounds when he was born, and he is as fat as a ball, so then just call it Yuan Yuan or Kyokiu." Yuan Yuan. Ball. Jiaran just came out of the backyard. Hearing this, he immediately spoke up for his son. "Yuan Yuan, just call it Yuan Yuan, Kyokiu is so childish." Fortunately, the fat boy in swaddling clothes was grinning in his sleep and didn't know about it at all. Otherwise, he will definitely roar, "I don't want it." A majestic man is actually named Yuan Yuan, he looks so much like a little girl. Might as well call it Kyokiu. It is foreseeable that in the coming years, he will be teased a lot because of this nickname. It's a pity that he didn't have the slightest ability to resist at this time, so he was forced to accept the fact of becoming a Yuan Yuan. Turn around the sky, that is, wash 3 times. The Earl's mansion has a grandson, which is no small matter. Even if the Li family doesn't want to make a big deal, dozens of relatives and friends come to the house. 2 years after giving birth to my grandma, I made another fortune, and all of Li's big teeth were about to fall out. All 3 members of the Xing family arrived in a carriage. Mr. Xing and his son were in front watching Yuan Yuan take a bath, while Mrs. Xing was in the back talking to her daughter. She took her daughter's hand, but she was so happy. "Mom, I don't have to worry about you anymore after you give birth to a son, you will have a firm foothold in the Li family. From now on, live a good life with your family members and be a good wife and mother, and you won't have to worry about anything in this life." Wanner was also excited, choked with sobs and hugged her mother's waist. Jiyan changed into a dress that made her look slimmer, put on a light sick makeup, and asked Shui Ling and Aunt He to support her, and walked around in front of her, trying to let all the visitors see her like this before returning to the backyard. Everyone only heard that she woke up and recovered somewhat. "Now that I can see that although she is still sick, she can barely move, I am all happy for the Li family. Some people are clever and even say that Yuan Yuan is a filial child who was born with blessings and washed away her aunt's illness." The Li family is now allergic to the word blessing and quickly changed the subject. It's enough for the family to know whether the child is good or not, but he doesn't care if others praise him. After the third bath, Wanner began her confinement period. Wenjuan was worried about it and soon came back with the stars. When the two of them come back, they naturally come back often for family fun. Li Laosan brought brother Li with him and came back every now and then to join in the fun. Jiaran misses his wife and son, and he always lives at home. Li Laoer comes back every night unless necessary. Including Li Zhensheng and brother Cat who just came back from abroad. The family suddenly became lively, and there were 2 tables for dinner every day. Finally, the family became prosperous. Li Yong found an opportunity and returned to the village to stay for one night. The Li family called their family of 4, the 2 village elders, Uncle Zhao and others, as well as the 3 members of the family, Dr. Zhang and Biao Lu, and drank the wedding wine together. The busy time always flies by, and it's almost Mid-Autumn Festival in a blink of an eye. The small baking workshop in Erkin has not been removed in the past 2 years. Zongzi making for Dragon Boat Festival, baked mooncakes for Mid-Autumn Festival, steamed bean buns in winter, fried cakes and twists for New Year are all inseparable from here. In the past few days, Hui Niang and the women in the village cleaned the small workshop early and were busy preparing fillings and utensils. Most of the Li family's children and grandchildren are back, and more children have been added to the family, which is simply more joy than happiness. Externally, there is also the fact that the princess is gradually recovering, which needs to be celebrated. So, the number of mooncakes to be baked this year is almost doubled. It took 2 days to make just the bean paste. Walnuts, hazelnuts, peanuts, etc. were packed in sacks and distributed to each house to help shell them. Jiyan was depressed at home and couldn't go out all the time, so he spent all his time thinking about mooncakes. As a result, fresh meat mooncakes and snowskin mooncakes appeared one after another. In addition to eating it at home, some of it was robbed by Li Zhensheng, Li Laoer, Mr. Wen and others, and used it to feed friends and colleagues everywhere. I simply made more good news and sent it to the palace for the emperor to taste. The favors of the marquis mansion, Bianjian's return to old customers, and the little sisters from each family also wanted to send a box. By the time of the Mid-Autumn Festival, all the trivial matters have been taken care of, and the good news has lost the interest in celebrating the festival. But this year the family has a full complement of relatives, so in order to make the old lady happy, she has to make good preparations. So Jiyan cheered up and proposed a few new dishes. Tao Hongying and Jie Huan, the 2 chefs, were in charge. They almost understood after just a few words of good news. Therefore, when the wine table was removed, the dishes and bowls were especially clean. It is really delicious, and everyone cheers for it. At dusk, before the sky completely darkens, a huge golden full moon hangs in the sky. There was a large round table in the courtyard of Li's house, with melons, pears, and peaches on it. Everyone sat around, eating the fruits and chatting. Little fox Sanjo jumped on the table and stole grapes in a grand manner. Xing and Yuier were wearing red little coats and holding big peaches in their hands, chasing each other and eating at the same time. Brother Cat was afraid that they would choke, so he took the horse, put them on the saddle, and walked around the yard. This horse is of course the pony that Mr. Li Laosi gave to his daughter on her birthday that year. Time flies by, as people grow older, the pony also grows into a horse. Everyone was talking about the profits from selling melons and the latest news in the city, and it was getting late at night. Tao Hongying yawned when she saw the stars and the crescent moon, so she broke up the moon viewing party. Mrs. Wen and Mr. Wen carried Yu Yaer back to rest, and Wen Wan and Jie Huan carried Xing to the backyard. As for Jiaran, he had already gone to accompany his wife who was in confinement and his son who only knew how to eat and sleep. Jiyan saw that grandma was not happy that night, so she made a fuss about sleeping with grandma. The old lady smiled and nodded her granddaughters for it. She stood up and was about to speak, but her vision went dark and she fell straight to the ground. It's another day of the fourth update. Dear children, is Wawa worthy of praise? You must get a few must-read votes. If it looks good or has a 5-star review, it would be even better. Crazy refill. The fourth update will continue tomorrow, come on. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 773. Chapter 773, if this continues, your lifespan will be shortened and you will die early. Grandma, Ji-yin screamed, and with quick eyesight, she helped the old lady. The others rushed forward like crazy and quickly placed the old lady in a chair. Ji-yin took out a silver needle from the space and pierced the old lady's philtrum directly. The old lady woke up slowly, as if she didn't understand what had just happened. Ji-yin withdrew the needle and wanted to check Grandma's pulse, but her hands were shaking badly. The old lady took a deep breath and managed to gather her energy to comfort her granddaughter. Don't be afraid, Fu-niu, Grandma is fine. Ji-yin couldn't bear it anymore, hugged her grandma and started crying. Just now, the moment Grandma fell, the Optimus Prime in her heart seemed to collapse, and the fear of the world collapsing came over her overwhelmingly. She even forgot to take a breath until Grandma woke up. Grandma, Grandma, nothing can happen to you. Li Zhensheng, Li Laoer and others also knelt down and gritted their teeth, not daring and unable to cry. Mr. Wen and Mrs. Wen heard that something was wrong, so they chased sister-in-law Qiang and took Yu back. They returned to the Li family yard. Jiawen, Wenjuan, and Jiaran also rushed over from the backyard. I heard that the old lady had just passed out. Everyone's expressions changed and they stared at the old lady, fearing that something might happen to her. At this moment, Yeshan had climbed over the hospital wall and jumped in with Dr. Zhang on his back. Originally, Divine Dr. Zhang was also having dinner at home today, but before admiring the moon, he suddenly had an inspiration and wanted to change some medicinal ingredients for a new prescription, so he hurried back. Unexpectedly, something happened to Mrs. Li while she was free. Seeing the master arrive, Ji-yin rushed over and hugged the old man's arm. Wu, Grandpa Zhang, my grandma has fainted and I can't hold my pulse. Zhang Shinai frowned, his heart aching. Ever since he accepted this girl as his apprentice, no matter how harsh he treated her, she never complained. Now that I am crying like this, it is obvious that I am extremely scared. But he didn't know how to comfort him. He scolded him when he opened his mouth. Go away, you look like a loser. How many times have I told you that the most important thing for a doctor is to be calm? If you look like this, 100 years of study will be in vain. After saying that, he put aside the good news and went over to check the old lady's pulse. The old lady felt sorry for her granddaughter and was afraid that she would be diagnosed with a serious illness, so she had to hide her wrist. Mr. Zhang, there's nothing wrong with me. I may have been acting violently just now because the children were making a fuss. What's wrong is not up to you. I only know after checking her pulse, Dr. Zhang's big hands were like pliers. He grabbed the old lady's wrist and pressed it down. Everyone subconsciously held their breath. At this moment, except for the night wind blowing the flowers and grass in the corner of the courtyard, there was no sound. It seems like 10,000 years have passed. Just when everyone couldn't hold on any longer and wanted to ask questions, Dr. Zhang finally finished diagnosing the pulse. He said with a dark face, I am worried about my heart, depressed for a long time, and my heart is blocked, which leads to coma. Take medicine quickly and I will be recuperated for at least a month. Remember to be open-minded, otherwise your lifespan will be shortened and you will die prematurely if things go on like this. The last 4 words sounded almost like thunder in everyone's ears. Every member of the Li family knelt down. Li Zhensheng choked and kowtowed, Uncle John, you must save my mother. If you want any medicinal materials, we will dig 3 feet into the ground and we will find them. Li Lao also said quickly, yes, Uncle John. You must let me get well, mother. Jiaran and Jiawen were crying with tears rolling down their cheeks. They did not dare to speak for fear of bursting into tears. Since they were sensible since they were young, Grandma is like a mountain, the family's support. Even though Grandma occasionally scolded them with a cold face and often dropped her pipes and pots, they all knew that Grandma loved them. Whether their uncle is missing, they have no crops and no grain, or they are even running for their lives, as long as their grandma is here, they have nothing to fear. But today the backer suddenly fell, and no one could accept it. Shen Zhijiang originally liked these children and grandchildren of the Li family, but now he was envious and distressed. He stretched out his hand to help Li Zhensheng and said, "Don't worry, I have treated many difficult and complicated diseases. Your mother is just overworried, not a serious illness. Prescribe a medicinal soup and take it for a month. You should be filial to her. She will stop thinking wildly and smile more, and everything will be fine." Having said that, he scolded Mrs. Li again, "Sister, don't you not like to hear harsh words? Anyone who has filial children and grandchildren like you would be able to laugh even in his dreams. Don't not cherish it? If you are really sick and can't help the children, just hold them back. If you have something in your heart, learn to persuade yourself. How can a person live in this world and everything goes as he wishes? Look at me, I'm a loner, I've been wandering all my life, and I don't know which grave I will be buried in when I die. I'm not worried, so what are you worried about?" Mrs. Li quickly smiled and responded, "What Dr. Zhang said was just to persuade me. You shouldn't curse yourself like this. How many times have we said that our family is not a heretic? When you die, of course you will be buried in our ancestral grave. The children will hold sacrifices during the festival and will not lack your share of incense and candles." Jiyan even asked the miracle Dr. Zhang and walked into the house, "Grandpa Zhang, stop nagging and hurry up and get a prescription. How many times have I told you, I will provide for you until the end of your life. Nanmu's longevity materials are all stored in the princess's mansion. Where else do you want to go?" Miracle Dr. Zhang was staggered by the pull. He was cursing, but there was a smile in his eyes. Soon, the prescription was filled. Jiyan made an excuse to go to the backyard to brew the medicine, but actually sneaked into the space and took advantage of several times the time difference to quickly brew the medicine. Old Mrs. Li really doesn't think she has any serious illness, but she is depressed, and she has to admit it. Although there were many happy events at home this month, she was also happy. But there was still no news about the grandson. She had been missing for a long time, and she was very anxious. "I didn't want to leave such a root cause of the disease and have an attack today." She stared at her children and grandchildren, drank the medicinal soup in one breath, and her granddaughter immediately stuffed a peeled grape into her mouth. "I'm just dizzy, why do you treat me like a child?" the old lady said vaguely, but unfortunately Jiyan didn't care about her at all, and fed her 5 or 6 grapes in a row before she stopped. No one dared to leave and kept staring at the old lady. The old lady wanted to give some advice, but her eyelids became heavier and heavier, and she fell asleep soon. Mother, Li Zhensheng, Li Lao and others thought that the old lady had fainted again, and they shouted in fear. Jiyan quickly waved her hand and whispered to the family to clarify their doubts. "There are calming ingredients in the medicinal soup. Grandma just fell asleep. Let her have a good sleep and recover faster." Everyone immediately shut up and did not dare to make a sound. Li Zhensheng knelt down and carefully carried his wife on his back. Li Lao and Li Lao San were guarding her, followed by Jia Ren, Jia Huan, Brother Li, and took the old lady back to the apartment in the backyard. Tao Hongying and Zhao Yuru helped their mother-in-law take off their coats, and while they were still discussing who would stay to watch the night, Jiyan was already lying next to the old lady. "Mother, Third uncle, you go to bed, I'll watch over grandma. No, you are a child, you should be afraid when something happens. Tao Hongying refused. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, delayed flowering. Chapter 774. Chapter 774. Everyone has his or her own grievances. It's a pity that Ji Yin has made up his mind not to leave. Tao Hongying and Zhao Yuru had no choice but to go out and say something to the waiting people. Then Tao Hongying stayed and Zhao Yuru came back at dawn. When Tao Hongying entered the house again, she saw her daughter holding the old lady's hand and crying silently. She couldn't help but sigh, covered her daughter with a thin quilt, and whispered advice. Don't worry, Dr. Zhang also said that your grandma is not seriously ill and will get better soon. Ji Yin choked up and said, Mom, it's all my fault. I shouldn't have supported my brother and the others to go to sea. Grandma is so sick because she is too worried about my brothers. Tao Hongying also felt a sore nose when she thought of her son who was wandering somewhere. She tried to cheer up and patted her daughter gently to comfort her. Don't think too much, this has nothing to do with you. Your brother and 11 GEER have such bad personalities, they are like jumping horses and monkeys, and they can't be contained at home. Even if they don't go to the Foreign Affairs Department or go to sea, I'm afraid they will still wander around the world. It's all the same danger, and the same homelessness, so it's better to go to the Foreign Affairs Department, do something meaningful for the country and the people, and work hard for a future for yourself. Besides, mother and son are connected. Although there is no news about your brother, mother knows that he must be alive and well. Ji Yin rubbed my mother's hand and curled up like a kitten. Mom, I can't live without my grandma, and I can't live without anyone in my family. Tao Hongying finally couldn't help but shed tears, but she immediately wiped them away and continued to pat her daughter gently. Believe me, Mom, everyone in the family is fine. Don't think too much. If you get sick, the genius in the family will really collapse. Ji Yin nodded. Perhaps my mother's rhythm of filming was just right, or maybe grandma's slight snoring was so reassuring that she fell asleep quickly. The moon sets and the sun rises, and in a blink of an eye it's 5 or 6 days again. Grandma, open your mouth quickly. Ji Yin lay on the bed, smiled and took a spoonful of jelly pudding and put it in her mouth. The old lady's eyes were bright after eating, and just when she was about to praise a few words, the door of the room was pushed open. Ji Yin quickly hid the box, looked at the old lady who came in guiltily, and asked, Mom, why aren't you asleep yet? Tao Hongying glared at her daughter and felt relieved when she saw her mother-in-law smiling. She couldn't help scolding her daughter, it's time to go to bed soon. Don't give your grandma anything weird to eat. Be careful if you break your teeth and suffer. I got it, mother. Good news should be sweet and cheerful. Tao Hongying pulled the quilt for her and went back to sleep. Except when the old lady first fell ill, she and Zhao Yuru took turns keeping vigil at night. During these 2 days, good news accompanied the old lady. I don't know whether it's because the medicine has taken effect, or because the old lady has really relaxed her mind and no longer thinks about her 3 grandchildren. The old lady has had a good appetite and slept well these past few days, and her face has turned a little rosy. The whole family breathed a sigh of relief, and now they dared to work separately during the day, but still got together in the evening. Even Li Laosan and brother Li, who are far away in Luoan, ride back and forth on horseback. How many times did the old lady say it, but they refused to compromise. Because no one can sleep well without looking at the old lady before going to bed at night. Except for the Wen family, not even the Ho family knew about the old lady's illness. They were afraid that too many people would come to visit and disturb the old lady's rest. The good news is as sticky as cakes. She never leaves grandma's side, eating and living with her. Before going to bed at night, she also searched for some novel snacks from her previous life from the space, and secretly ate a few bites with her grandma, making her as happy as a child. Actually, the old lady was not a glutton. She just remembered that when her granddaughter was a child, their grandparents would also lie under the quilt and eat secretly. Life was poor at that time, but my children and grandchildren were all around me. Nowadays, life is prosperous, but the children and grandchildren have gone their separate ways. Fortunately, my granddaughter is always here. After drinking the medicinal soup and eating half of the jelly pudding left in the box to cover up the bitter taste in her mouth, the old lady lay down. Jian took out a travel journal and read it slowly. Of course, the travel notes were written by Brother Mao. In the past 2 years, he has traveled to almost all the capitals in Jiangnan. He has published several books, and they have been very popular. In fact, his words are not gorgeous, and even ordinary people who have not read can understand them. But this only made his travel notes more popular. After reading his travel notes, it seems that readers share a pair of eyes and a mouth with him, and have seen different customs and tasted countless delicacies together. As the old lady listened, she fell asleep with a smile on her face. Let's not talk about the Li family, because the old lady suddenly fell ill, and everything came to a semi-standstill. Let me just say that the palace in the east of the new capital city is also very lively these days. At the beginning of the lanterns in various palaces were lit up. From a distance, they looked like sparks, and it was a very beautiful scene. The eunuchs and maids in Cunning Palace had no intention of admiring it. They wished they had to carry their legs while walking and did not dare to make any sound. Because the master has been like a powder keg that is about to explode these days, and is about to explode at any time. In case who was unlucky and inexplicably lit the lead, it was the end of the bones. In the palace, the queen dragged her long skirt and walked around and around on the ground. A few wrinkles were added to her face that was no longer smooth due to her age. "Isn't there any news from the front?" The queen looked at the nanny at the door, and her tone was very bad. Mammy tried her best to endure it, so she didn't tremble, and whispered, "Madam, please calm down, maybe the emperor is busy with government affairs today, and he hasn't decided where to stay tonight." "Humph," the queen snorted coldly and cursed, "busy with government affairs? Busy with government affairs, how can he have time to accompany that in Ronghua Palace to enjoy flowers? How can he have time to play football with that sick young man in the yard? Only when he comes to see me, he is too busy and has no time. Even when he comes to have dinner with me, he comes and goes in a hurry." Mammy did not dare to respond, and could only lower her head further, for fear of getting involved in the conflict between the emperor and the empress. It is unfortunate that the who went to inquire about the news came back at this time. When he entered the door, he knelt down to report. "Mother, the second prince has caught wind and called your majesty has gone to Ronghua Palace." "Bitch," the queen couldn't bear it any longer, picked up the incense burner and smashed it out. The incense burner fell to the ground and the incense was scattered everywhere. The whole room was full of ants, eunuchs, and maids, who were so frightened that they knelt down and trembled. When the queen saw them like this, she became even more angry. Just as she was about to punish a few of them to vent her anger, the third princess arrived. In just 2 years, the unruly and willful princess has become dignified and gentle. She is tall and thin, and she is more and more girlish when she walks. She kicked out all the slaves with her mouth, then helped her mother to the inner room, carefully poured warm tea, served her mother and drank a few sips. Even though the queen had so many grievances and was unwilling to get angry with her only daughter, she still couldn't help but complain. "Your father has been going to Ronghua Palace for half a month. It's not because that gave birth to a prince. If you were a prince, I wouldn't have to suffer such humiliation." The third princess felt sad and lowered her head. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 775. Chapter 775 Please establish a prince. The Queen Mother has said this so many times in the past few years, especially recently, that she has almost kept it on her lips. It is not her will to be born a woman or a man. Even sometimes, she didn't want to be born into a royal family. If she was given a choice, she would like to trade with that girl from the Lee family. Maybe you don't have huge wealth, but you do have the love of your family and the most precious freedom. She wears the name of a princess, but she actually has to notify her parents if she wants to see them. Only with permission can she have a look and say a few words. Getting out of the palace is even more difficult. Princess is just a nice name, but in fact she is just a caged bird. Moreover, she had to be caught between her father and mother, and she had to hear endless complaints of grievances. She sighed inwardly and advised, "Mother, you are the queen. No one can be more favored than you. I'm going to take a step back and say that from now on, my father, no matter who ascends the throne, I will respect you as the Empress Dowager. Why do you have to do this? You have to suffer yourself so much that others can take advantage of you." "No, you don't understand," the queen waved her hand, interrupting her daughter. "I am the queen, your father's wife, but your father has abandoned her like a pair of worn shoes. I cannot bear to swallow this. That in Ronghua Palace has always been able to easily dominate this palace. Isn't it just because she gave birth to a prince? As long as I give birth to a prince, I will be the legitimate crown prince of Tianwu. After the prince takes over the throne, my queen mother will be able to sit comfortably. Otherwise, not only me, but also your grandfather's family, and even you, will not end well." The third princess still wanted to speak, but the queen was impatient and started to chase her away. "Go back, learn the rules, and come here less often. If you have nothing to do, help me keep an eye on the Ronghua Palace, and go to your father to say a few good words for me. Don't let him forget about me." Palace. The third princess felt bitter in her heart, and all the words she could say were choked in her throat. She could only stand up, bow, and retreat. The night wind of early autumn brought a bit of chill. The two palace maids who were following the third princess gently stepped forward and put a thin cloak on their master. One of the palace maids whispered, "Your Highness, the autumn night is cold, so you should go back." "Yes, let's go back." The third princess gathered her cloak and looked at the brightly lit Ronghua Palace. The imperial concubine has always been peaceful and never competed for favors. Even after giving birth to the second prince, she never became arrogant and domineering. What happened recently? I actually took the initiative to lure my father to the Ronghua Palace again and again, which also completely angered my mother. The second day was the court meeting. The Emperor Sushi slept well last night. He was sitting on the dragon chair and looked at the ministers with a pleasant look. The weather has been going well in the past 2 years. Although Tianwu retreated to the south of the Yangtze River, the people had enough food and clothing, and they were no longer as helpless as before. Especially recently, the autumn harvest has begun again. Countless corn and potatoes are spread all over the mountains and plains, enough to feed all the people of Tianwu, and there is even enough left to fill the national treasury in preparation for the complete retaking of the lost land in Jiangbei. The ministers came forward one after another, but it was just a superficial matter. Overall, this DPRK meeting was harmonious. But some people just don't want this harmony to continue. A fourth-rank censor knelt on the ground and shouted loudly, "Please make him a prince. Please establish a crown prince." The quiet courtroom was like a smoking oil pan that had been poured into a ladle of cold water and exploded in an instant. The invisible oil stars crackled and burned, making everyone want to jump. Not to mention that the emperor is now in good health. There are only 2 princes in the harem, one is weak and the other has just turned 1 year old, so they are not good candidates. The most important thing is that neither of these 2 princes were born to the queen. In case a prince is established and the queen gives birth to another child, wouldn't that be the root of disaster? Tianwu may start a civil war before taking back Jiangbei. Immediately some old ministers objected and scolded the censor for harboring evil intentions. But some people agreed, saying that only by establishing a prince early can the country be stable. The court, which was peaceful and harmonious just now, has turned into a mess. Li Laoer, Wen Yushi, and Lu Haiheng glanced at each other, lowered their heads in unison, and pretended not to hear anything. They are staunch royalists, and they will implement whatever the emperor decides. Now the emperor has not mentioned the establishment of a prince. These people who take the initiative to stir up trouble will definitely not end well. Sure enough, a dispute ended in the Emperor Longyan being furious. The proposed censor was demoted to a small peripheral county to serve as county magistrate. The rest of the people shrunk their necks and retreated obediently, as if the person who had just argued so red-faced and thick-necked was a bystander. The court was dismissed and everyone left the palace. Soon, almost everyone in Zindu knew about the matter of establishing a prince. Some people disagreed, some watched the fun, and some talked about it. But there are also people who have trouble sleeping and eating because of this, and that is the queen's natal family. You must know that the honor and disgrace of their family are tied to the queen. If the emperor appoints a prince at this time, it will definitely not be good for the queen, and it will not be good for Jiangning Haofu. The queen's mother, Mrs. Wu, immediately handed the sign and entered the palace. In Cunning Palace, we just picked up a bunch of broken incense burners last night, and now we are picking up porcelain pieces all over the floor. The queen was as angry as a madman and started crying when she saw her mother. Mother, these courtiers asked me to establish a crown prince, but they don't take me seriously. Mrs. Wu feels sorry for her daughter, but she is more concerned about her family's future. She pulled her daughter and asked in a low voice, now that things have happened, the only solution is for you to get pregnant as soon as possible. As long as you give birth to a prince, your position as prince will never be lost. Ugh, mother, I want to have a baby too, I've even dreamed of giving birth. The queen couldn't help wiping her tears and beating her stomach angrily, but after drinking countless decoctions and folk remedies, there has been no movement. Now that the emperor has been seduced by that in Ronghua Palace, he is unwilling to come over on the 1st and 15th day of the lunar month. Even if he comes, he will have a quick meal and then leave. Mrs. Wu wanted to say that her daughter was useless, but because of her status, she did not dare to curse her. She could only say, think of a way to coax the emperor back and try to let him stay for a few more days. The family will also help you think of a way. In short, you can't let the crown prince fall into the hands of others. Okay, mother. The queen was not a smart person. She was at a loss for words at the moment. Her mother made the decision for her, which made her feel much better and less anxious. The mother and daughter said a few more words before Mrs. Wu left the palace. Actually, what she had just said to comfort her daughter was that it was impossible for her family to help her find a solution. It has been 3 years. If the queen could give birth to a prince, she would have done so long ago. But for the sake of the century-old wealth of the family, we still have to continue to think of ways. Click. Mrs. Wu was lost in thought when a crisp sound suddenly came from under the carriage. The driver quickly stopped the carriage, and a guard came forward to check. He quickly walked to the window and reported, "Madam, there are some problems with the carriage. Please wait a moment, and then you can continue to set off after it is repaired." Mrs. Wu frowned and replied, "Hurry up and fix it, don't worry about it later." The guard and the coachman breathed a sigh of relief and hurriedly repaired it. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 776. Chapter 776. Walls have ears. Mrs. Wu was bored sitting in the car, so she opened the car window and looked at the street view to relax. Possibly to take a shortcut, the carriage was parked in the south of the city. The alleys crisscrossed the area, and it seemed that many people lived there. From time to time, children ran past shouting, and there were also vendors carrying burdens shouting and selling groceries. There are even women who are in a hurry to make lunch and come out with baskets to buy vegetables. At this moment, a woman in gray walked not far outside the carriage. She seemed to have met a familiar sister, and they started chatting lively. "Sister Wang, where are you going in such a hurry?" The Wang girl was wearing a blue dress. She was short and plump and had a smile on her face. It was obvious that she had met a happy event. She grabbed the woman in gray's basket, stuffed 2 brown eggs directly into it, and showed off with a smile. "My daughter-in-law has given birth to a fat baby weighing 8 pounds, I'm going to hand out brown eggs for good luck." The woman in gray hurriedly responded with a smile, "Oh, this is such a happy event. This boy will grow up safely and healthily, and become a good man with 8 talents and even better looks than Panan. Everyone likes to hear good words." The woman in blue opened her mouth from ear to ear with joy and kept saying thank you. Mrs. Wu in the carriage listened, but she felt uncomfortable in her heart. As the daughter of the mother of the country, it is extremely difficult to give birth to a child. As a result, these mud-legged people ended up one after another, and it was extremely easy. At this time, I heard the woman in gray ask, "Sister Wang, either I want to gossip, or I am just curious and want to ask more questions. I remember your wife, there has been no movement for 5 or 6 years after getting married, so why did she suddenly give birth to a big fat boy? Did she take some folk medicine, or did she find a famous doctor somewhere?" "Oh, sister, that's a question that goes to the bottom of my heart." The woman in blue became more energetic, rolled up her sleeves and spoke. "Actually, it's all my fault that my daughter-in-law gave birth to a fat grandson. They have no children, and I'm worried. I've tried all kinds of methods, but my daughter-in-law's stomach hasn't moved yet. I happened to hear someone say that Ching Cheng Temple is very effective in making wishes, so I rushed there with some dry food. I climbed the mountain for half a day, kowtowed 81 times in the main hall, donated 20 taels of silver, and then returned home. Less than a month later, my daughter-in-law started vomiting. She went to the hospital for a checkup and found out she was pregnant." Seriously, the woman in gray clothes was surprised and asked, "Is Ching Cheng Temple really so spiritual? Then I have to ask for it. My son is not good at studying. Maybe I can ask him to come back as the #1 scholar." The woman in blue nodded vigorously, pulled the woman in gray and said, "I heard that an old immortal has settled in Ching Cheng Mountain in the past 2 years, so it is so effective. If you want to go, you must hurry up, otherwise the old is gone and your request will not work." The woman in gray hurriedly said, don't worry, I'll go buy groceries first and get settled at home. I'll take my son there tomorrow." The two chatted for a few more words, then hurriedly separated and went about their business. Mrs. Wu in the carriage, on the other hand, suddenly felt moved after hearing the story from beginning to end. If Ching Cheng Temple is so effective, it would be worth a visit. Even if it doesn't work, don't be afraid, just relax. Old Mrs. Li was kept at home by her children and grandchildren, eating, drinking and sleeping every day. She was not allowed to work or go out at all, but she was very depressed. On this day, the old lady began to have a disagreement. "Are you treating me like a pig? I just couldn't think about it for a while and didn't sleep well, so I fainted for a while. It's not like my arms and legs are disabled, so why can't I go out for a walk? I either go far or go to the fields to have a look. I've finished picking the jade melons and are planting cabbages and radishes in the fields. I just want to work, but there's no work to do. Isn't this even possible?" After saying that, she pushed the bowl of medicinal soup out and didn't even take the medicine at all. Tao Hongying and Zhao Yuru looked at each other, both funny and helpless. Little kids are really hard to coax. Dr. Zhang asked the old lady to rest for a month. It has only been a few days, but she can no longer hold on. Just as the good news came in from outside, a jumping little fox followed behind. Tao Hongying regarded her daughter as a savior and quickly called her to come and help. Jiyan pulled at the skirt of his clothes, and there were more than a dozen round dates in his pockets. This thing is somewhat similar to the kiwi fruit from the previous life, except that it is smaller. She specially went up the mountain to pick it and give it to her grandma to eat freshly. As a result, I put it in the hands of the old lady. The old lady ate one and put it down. There was no good news, so I had to check the old lady's pulse. Seeing that she was indeed fine, I begged my mother and aunt for mercy. Grandma has not recovered well, and her pulse is very stable. Being depressed at home all the time is not conducive to maintaining your health. It just so happens that I haven't been to a shop in the city for a long time. Why don't I ask Grandma to go for a walk with me in the car and I'll be back soon. Before Tao Hongying and Zhao Yuru could speak, the old lady stood up happily and said, "Okay, this is a good idea." After saying that, she started to call for people to set up the carriage. Tao Hongying and Zhao Yuru could only quickly arrange manpower to pack the carriage. The Li family's carriage is not luxurious, but it is very clean and spacious. It is now covered with bedding to ensure that the old lady can sleep at any time when she is tired. Mami He and Shui Ling waited on the carriage, while Yeshan and Dong Mei sat on the shaft of the carriage and were responsible for driving the carriage, which was very safe and considerate. Soon, the carriage left the village and rushed to the new capital. The old lady opened the car window, looked at the busy farmers in the fields beside the road, and the cloudless blue sky, and breathed a sigh of relief. She turned to complain to her granddaughter, "Grandma finally knows why you were so excited every time you came out when you were a child. It's really uncomfortable to be trapped at home." Jiyan laughed, holding her grandma's arm, and the grandson and grandson enjoyed the scenery together. "Nai, when you feel better, find a good opportunity, and I will take you on a trip. Let my seventh brother be your guide, he knows best where to find delicious food and fun places." "Okay, we won't pay him any wages, just food and accommodation every day," the old lady was coaxed into laughing. Shui Ling also joined in the fun and quickly begged, "Old madam, please take me with you. I can run errands, cook, and beat up bad guys." Even Nanny he quickly added, "Old madam, you can't abandon this old slave. Wherever you go, this old slave will go." Mrs. Lee smiled even more happily and responded, "Okay, let's all go, let's go together." Chatting and laughing all the way, we soon arrived among the white clouds. The old lady went to the backyard for a walk, and Jiyan went to talk to shopkeeper Peng. Shopkeeper Peng vaguely heard that the old lady in the mansion had not been feeling well recently, and she had been worried for several days. Just now I saw that the old lady looked good, and I was very happy. At this moment, he quickly took the account book to his employer, and said that business has been very booming recently, and asked for an increase in quantity. Jiyan wore a curtain hat and felt a little stuffy, so he said, "Although the weather will get cold soon, tigers are still powerful in autumn, so don't increase the dosage. Everything is based on word of mouth. I would rather sell for less money than lose word of mouth due to quality issues." "Yes, don't worry." Boss Peng Chuan was originally a little inflated due to the daily income, so he was given a few words of beating, and he was a little alarmed. At this moment, a middle-aged man who looked like a manager suddenly appeared outside the door and shouted loudly, "Where's the shopkeeper? Come here quickly." Peng Chuan hurriedly greeted him with a smile on his face. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 777. Chapter 777, A Dog Fights Against Human Power. The steward squinted his eyes and looked arrogant, and said, Our master is going to burn incense at the Taoist temple, so hurry up and pay attention. I have picked out 4 boxes of the snacks offered, as well as snacks for the road, and any new products I will serve you well, and your money will be indispensable. Okay, wait a moment, I'll put some snacks for you. Peng Chuan didn't care about this man's arrogant appearance, and quickly called the boy to fill up the snacks. The little boy was quick with his hands and feet. He used bamboo tongs to take out the snacks and put them into the boxes carefully. The steward was walking around the store casually, and a plate of puffs was delivered from behind. The crispy and sweet shell was wrapped in white cream, which was very tempting. The steward couldn't help but reached out, pinched one, stuffed it into his mouth, and then praised, "Well, not bad, it's so sweet." As he spoke, he took 2 more, ate them in big gulps, and wanted to get more. Peng Chuan frowned, very unhappy. He stepped forward and removed the tray of puffs, and said with a smile, "The guest likes these puffs. He is really knowledgeable. This is the best new product sold in our shop recently. My lord, why don't you sit down and have a cup of tea? I'll put a few on a plate and you'll eat slowly." "No need," the steward replied vaguely before swallowing the puffs in his mouth, "I'm in a hurry, I can just eat a few." After saying that, he still extended his hand. Peng Chuan refused to give way, and his tone became colder. "Sir, the taste of the goods in our shop can be a little bad, but they must be clean. If you reach out and take it from the plate like this, it won't be easy to sell it to other customers." The steward was stunned for a moment, then looked at the other customers in the shop and looked over, and he became annoyed. "Slave dog, I just ate a few snacks from you, and this is how you behave. Is this how you open your business? Do you know which family I belong to? I came to buy your snacks because I think highly of you. The big boss behind Bianjian is the emperor." When the third princess and Baolei opened a branch together before, they behaved themselves every time they came to pick up goods. Now that some unruly dog suddenly appears, it's no wonder that Peng Chuan is afraid. Even if you are a noble person, what's wrong? No one in the world can be more noble than his first boss, let alone the second boss who is still here. Peng Chuan immediately said, "No matter which house you are a slave in, I believe your master doesn't want to hear that your slave running into someone else's shop is so embarrassing and so rude." It's a pity that the steward couldn't hear his warning at all, and shouted loudly, "I am from the Jiangning Marquis mansion, our wife is the queen's mother, and she is in the carriage outside the door. How dare you look down on our Jiangning Marquis mansion?" Before he could finish speaking, Jiyan, who was sitting in the corner, became impatient and loudly ordered Shui Ling, "Go out and ask Mrs. Wu, she said that the servants of the Marquis should be taught the rules. A servant can be stupid, but he must be smart when he goes out. Doesn't she know who the big boss in Bianjian is? Does she need this princess to tell her personally?" "This princess?" The steward and the other guests were stunned when they heard the news. Then they saw that the good news was wearing a curtain hat, but she was very elegantly dressed, so they immediately guessed her identity. Princess Kangal. It is rumored that Princess Kangal is seriously ill. Now she has recovered and can go out and walk around. The guests took a second look, their expressions full of curiosity. But the steward of the Marquis mansion was a little embarrassed. He was 30% afraid and 70% terrified, but he refused to give in. "I didn't say anything either." Shui Ling didn't care what he said. She even kicked him because he was blocking the road, then pulled his collar and dragged him out. Peng Chuan then took the boy and followed him carrying the box of snacks. Mrs. Wu was waiting in the car, a little impatient, and asked the nanny who was waiting at her, "Mother son, go and see, why haven't you bought a snack? Why haven't you come back? Do you want it to be freshly baked?" She was worried because the steward who bought the snacks was her nephew, who had just come from her hometown. She expected her nephew to take care of her in old age, so she begged her wife to let him come into the house to take care of her. Today was the first time she went out with her master. Grandma Sun quickly smiled and said, "Madam, don't worry, I'll go and hurry you up. This shop is famous for its dim sum. Maybe there are too many people, so I was delayed for a while." After saying that, she quickly jumped out of the car, but as soon as she climbed the steps, before entering the shop, she saw her nephew being dragged out. Her expression changed at that time, and she wanted to ask a few questions loudly, but Shui Ling spoke first. "Are you the nanny of the Jiangning Marquis mansion? When you get back, tell your master that idiots like this should not be sent out on errands, as they will not embarrass the Marquis mansion." There were so many guests in the house just now, and they all saw that he had lost his way. "I won't tell you what he did. You should pay for the snacks quickly, and then take this idiot back and teach him well. I didn't even look at who the big boss of our shop was, but he actually came here to act wild and blinded his dog." After saying that, she exerted force on her hand, and the steward stumbled and fell in front of Grandma Sun. Peng Chuan signaled the boy to give the snack box to Grandma Sun, then smiled and stretched out his hand towards her. "Thank you for your patronage, 3 taels of silver." Grandma Sun had a dark face. She wanted to curse a few times but didn't dare. She could only open her purse and pay the money. Peng Chuan casually handed over his hand and took the people back. Grandma Sun quickly picked up her nephew and lowered her voice and asked, "What on earth did you do?" The steward was also very aggrieved and said angrily, "I just ate a few snacks and had a few quarrels with the shopkeeper, and then there was a girl inside who called herself the princess and kicked me out." Mother Sun gritted her teeth angrily and scolded, "The owner behind this shop is the emperor, who gave you the courage to run in and act wild." Huh, the steward was so surprised that he couldn't believe it at all. "It's impossible. How could the emperor leave the palace and open a shop?" Grandma Sun pinched her hard twice and said angrily, "That's why Princess Kangal is taking care of it, the one you offended just now. Follow me carefully and don't cause any trouble again. I'll hide this matter from the master first." She didn't dare to delay. She endured her anger and quickly picked up the snack box and got into the carriage. Mrs. Wu vaguely heard a few words and asked, "What happened?" Grandma Sun quickly smiled and said, "Back to madam, it's nothing important. The shopkeeper in Bianjian heard that you came to buy snacks, so he personally brought them out. The old slave's nephew is not very knowledgeable and told me that the snacks in the shop are too expensive." As expected, Mrs. Wu didn't ask any further questions and just said, "As expensive as it is, the snacks in this shop are really good. Keep them carefully and offer them when you get to the mountain." "Yes, Madam." Grandma Sun responded quickly, with an inexplicable light flashing in her half-lowered eyes. The carriage started moving again. She took the opportunity to close the window and glanced at the door among the white clouds, smiling mysteriously. Ji Yin showed her identity and couldn't sit in the front hall, so she looked slightly weak and walked back holding Shuoling's arm. As soon as she entered the yard, she sneezed twice, loudly, and muttered, "Who is scolding me?" End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 778. Chapter 778 Meeting an Old Immortal on the Road. Shui Ling joked, "Miss, people say, I think twice, scold you, and then whisper, but I don't think 2 sneezes necessarily mean someone is scolding you. Maybe it's because you're thinking about it again and again." He laughed loudly after hearing the good news and responded smoothly, "Then sneezing 3 times is just thinking about it again and again." At this time, Shui Ling also laughed. Mrs. Li was chatting with Chen 11. Seeing their master and servant looking so happy, she asked, "What's the matter? You two are laughing like this." "It's nothing, Grandma, I just fixed up a blind scoundrel," Ji Yin said casually, and then began to make an accounting. Mrs. Li was eating snacks and snacks. Occasionally, her granddaughter would hold her arms and show off her income with a smile. She was also happy. After checking the account books, the grandfather and grandson went for a walk in Baiwan Garden again. It happened that Luzong and Jiasu were also there, greeting each other, and it was very lively. Jiyan asked Shui Ling to get a jade melon from the car and cut it into pieces, then asked Luzong and Jiasu to sit down. "Brother Lu, brother Jia, why are you here?" Jiasu smiled and said, "I'm here as a guest today. Your brother Lu wants to buy flowers. I'll come with him for a walk." Luzong also smiled and said, "There is an elder who is a family friend celebrating his birthday, and I want to buy the basin golden lotus, but there is none here. I originally wanted to go to Broken Gold Beach to ask for your help, but you and Grandma came over instead." Luzong and Jiasu have been almost inseparable from the boys in the family in the past 2 years, and Mrs. Lee regards them as her juniors. Especially hearing Luzong call her grandma, she even beamed. At this moment, she responded, "It's better to find good news about this matter. There are many good flowers in her greenhouse." Just as Shui Ling came over with a plate of jade melons, Jiyan asked them to take it and eat it themselves, and asked Shui Ling, "There are 3 melons left in the car, cut one and give it to Master Cao and others to quench their thirst. The other 2 will be sent to the relief department. My second uncle must be there." Lao Cao was waiting on the side. Hearing this, he quickly stepped forward to salute and thank him. Jiyan said, "Master Cao, I will send someone to send 5 basins of golden lotus tomorrow. Remember to pick a good one for Brother Lu." "Yes." Princess Lao Cao quickly retreated. Luzon was not polite, and begged with a smile, "Sister Jiyan, if you have peaches at home, give me a few more. If an old man celebrates his birthday, giving birthday peaches is the icing on the cake." Jiyan looked distressed, wrinkled her nose and replied, "Well, there are only 10 peaches left on my peach tree. I will divide them between 6 peaches, Brother Lu, and the remaining 4 will probably go into Baza's belly. I'm so pitiful. I worked so hard to plant peaches, but in the end they were all picked away by you." Everyone couldn't help but laugh, and Mr. Lu quickly said, "I have a pair of peaches carved from hibiscus and jade. I will bring them to you next time I go to Broken Gold Beach. I will exchange my rights for them." "Haha, that's pretty much it." Jiyan immediately beamed, causing everyone to laugh again. After eating jade melon and chatting for a while, Luzon and Jiasu left, and Jiyan accompanied her grandma back to Sujintan. Let's not talk about Broken Gold Beach, just say that the Wu family's carriage went all the way out of the city and went straight to Qingcheng Temple. Qingcheng Temple is located on Qingcheng Mountain more than 30 miles southwest of Xindu. It was not very famous originally. There are more than a dozen Taoist priests, 3 main halls, and more than a dozen houses where the Taoist priests live. But since the imperial court moved the capital, it has been overcrowded, and the girls and wives who have gone crazy in the backyards of various houses have to find an excuse to go out for a walk. So, going to the Taoist temple to offer incense and pray for the safety of the whole family became the best excuse. As for Qingcheng Temple, it is neither far nor near, so it is the best place to go. There are more people coming and going, more people making wishes, and there are always a few who get their wishes. As word spread, Qingcheng Temple became more and more famous, and more people came. The previous land was not enough, so 7 or 8 small yards were added after the visit. Occasionally, distinguished guests come over, so it is convenient for a temporary rest. Even the small village at the foot of the mountain has grown by hundreds of households in 3 years, counting exclusively on Qingcheng Guan for survival. There were people carrying sedan chairs up the mountain, people selling snacks, and all kinds of incense and candles. In short, it was very lively. To show her sincerity, Mrs. Wu got off the carriage and took Grandma's son, 2 maids, 2 guards, and a steward with her to climb the mountain directly. 7 or 8 people, especially Madame Wu, were dressed in luxurious clothes and crowded around each other, which was very eye-catching. It was okay at first. Mrs. Wu climbed 100 stone steps in one go and it was very smooth. But it won't work upward. Chiulahua was so sunburned that Mrs. Wu's makeup was almost worn off. Grandma Sun and the two maids almost supported the master and climbed more than 50 levels. The master and servant were almost dead from exhaustion. Grandma Sun pointed to the path next to her and said, "Madam, there seems to be a small pavilion next to it. It's very shady. Let's go there and have a rest." Mrs. Wu is also quite old. She has never suffered like this. She heard that she could take a break, so she immediately agreed. So a group of people cheered and changed the route. The path turned through the trees, and sure enough, there was a small grass pavilion. Mother Sun served her master and sat down. She then asked her nephew to take the nurse to the temple to find clean spring water to quench her master's thirst. The nephew is still worried about the trouble he got into before. Just now along the way, he chatted with two guards, but he got to know the details about Princess Kangal and Bianjian. Even now, his knees were still weak. He was afraid that his master would know that he had gotten into trouble, so when he heard this opportunity to show off, he immediately took action, took the kettle and took the people away. Mrs. Wu pulled off her handkerchief, fanning herself from time to time, and complained, "What time of year it is, and it's still so hot. I should have brought a fan. Yeah, it's almost September. If we were in Kyoto, it would be snowing at this time." Grandma Sun agreed, got up and picked two big leaves from the tree next to her. Perhaps because the leaves were so strong, she made a lot of noise. Then she made a fan out of leaves and fanned her master, which was very useful to Mrs. Wu. Mrs. Wu was leaning on the pavilion pillar and was about to speak when she saw a Taoist priest in blue walking out of the woods not far away. Perhaps because of his age, the Taoist priest's hair and beard have turned white, and his long white eyebrows drooped. But there were not many wrinkles on his face, and it was very rosy and looked very good. Especially one pair of eyes, clear and bright, with a kind of compassion that looks down on all living beings. His left arm was resting on a piece of green jade pole, and his right hand was stroking his white beard. In addition to these four words, there is simply no way to describe the old man in front of me. Mrs. Wu subconsciously sat up straight, and Grandma Sun couldn't help but exclaimed, "Oh, how old is this old fairy? Her eyebrows are a foot long." Before Mrs. Wu could speak, the old Taoist priest looked at them and spoke. "No wonder there is purple energy lingering in this place. It turns out that there are noble people coming and going." Having said that, he turned around to leave. As soon as he took a step forward, he suddenly turned around, frowned and looked at Mrs. Wu carefully, frowned and whispered, "No, this is a sign that dark clouds cover the moon. What a pity, what a pity." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 779. Chapter 779. The sign of dark clouds covering the moon. Mrs. Wu was stunned for a moment, and her mind suddenly recalled the previous conversation between the two market women. The reason why Qingcheng Temple is so effective is because there are old gods who settled here. Could this person in front of me be the old god? She stood up suddenly, chased after him in a few steps, saluted respectfully, and asked tentatively, "Taoist master, are you an old immortal who has wandered here?" "Little woman, I'm in trouble, so I came here to make a wish. I wonder if I would be honored to invite you to sit in the pavilion." The old Taoist shook his fly whisk and shouted "Immeasurable Heavenly Lord" as a return gift. But he shook his head and refused, saying, "Madam, you are an old man and don't interfere in worldly affairs. You'd better do as you please." After saying this, he turned around. Mrs. Wu was so anxious that she knelt down and pulled the corner of his robe. Taoist priest, this little woman is in trouble. I sincerely ask for permission, and I hope that the Taoist priest can help me. The old Taoist was a little anxious, unable to pull off his robe, and a little embarrassed. In the end, he had no choice but to say, "Madam, you are stained with purple energy, and kneeling down like this will ruin the old Taoist's practice. Please get up, fellow old Taoist, just say a few words." Mrs. Wu was ecstatic, got up quickly, and led the old Taoist into the pavilion. Grandma Sun was very discerning. She quickly picked up the snack box and sent the maid away to guard it outside. She was the only one waiting on the left and right. Lao Tao was not polite, he reached into the box, took out a piece of snack and ate it, and finally said, "Madam, if I eat a piece of snack from you, I can be considered a favor from you. What wish do you want to make? Just tell me briefly. As long as you can do it, I will try my best." Mrs. Wu felt much more at ease, but she still tested it. "Taoist priest is wise, maybe you have already guessed my identity." The old Taoist hesitated for a moment and said, "Madam is contaminated with dragon energy. She must have been to the royal family recently or had contact with people from the royal family. And there is a faint purple air condensation on the top of Madam's head, and there is a faint sound of phoenix. If the old Taoist's guess is correct, my wife should be a relative of the current queen." Mrs. Wu's eyes brightened when she heard this, and she became more and more excited. Yes, yes, the Taoist priest guessed it right. The little woman was born in the Jiangning Marquis mansion, and the current queen is the little woman's daughter. The old Taoist nodded, but said, "If Madam wants to ask about the queen, I'm sorry that I can't relieve my worries. There are laws in the way of heaven, and no one can break them easily. Madam, please don't speak respectfully. If Madam wants to ask the family." "No, no," Mrs. Wu heard this anxiously and pleaded, "Taoist master, you can't say that the little lady came all the way today just for the queen's business. I sincerely hope that the little woman will always be in my thoughts. Please be sure to relieve the little woman's worries. As long as the Taoist priest is willing to give me some advice, the little woman is willing to donate 5,000 taels of silver to Qingcheng Temple to recast the Sanking true body." The old Taoist priest was silent and refused to speak. Mrs. Wu really had no choice but to kneel down again and rack her brains to think of reasons. "Taoist priest, this little woman is not doing this for her own selfish reasons, but for the sake of the queen, the mother of a country. The queen has no children, her position is unstable, and Tianwu has no legitimate prince. If this continues, there will be chaos. Half of the country has been lost now. If chaos breaks out again, the people will still suffer. I ask the Taoist master to be compassionate and give me some guidance." The old Taoist couldn't stand listening anymore, so he stretched out his fly whisk, helped Mrs. Wu up, and sighed deeply. "Madam, you are so sincere and have the world in mind. The old Taoist can only take the risk once. Today's words will only be spoken once by the old Taoist. After the incident, the old Taoist will remain in seclusion for 3 years to atone for today's interference in the world of mortals." "Thank you, Taoist master, thank you, Taoist master." Mrs. Wu didn't care how he wanted to atone for his sins, as long as he could help solve the problem. The Taoist priest asked the queen's horoscope, then counted her fingers, and his brows furrowed even deeper. "When I saw the lady for the first time, the old Taoist had some feelings and guessed a few points. Now after careful calculation, the guess was indeed correct. The queen's destiny is precious, and it does not mean that she has no children." Seriously, Mrs. Wu got excited and asked anxiously, "Then why does the queen only have one princess now? We have tried our best, but the queen is not pregnant." The old Taoist's lips moved, as if he had broken free from some invisible law. It took a lot of effort to say 2 sentences. "Dark clouds cover the moon. Someone stole the queen's luck, and she was a woman. After saying that, his expression changed, he groaned, and blood actually overflowed from the corner of his mouth. Mrs. Wu was startled, and Grandma Sun almost shouted. Lao Dao calmly took out a handkerchief from his sleeve, wiped away the blood, and let out a long breath. Mrs. Wu took courage and asked again, the Taoist priest may have figured out who this person is. How can we regain the queen's luck? Lao Dao made a few gestures, and finally looked to the northwest and said, 30 miles outside the new capital, there are mountains and rivers, and this woman is blessed with good fortune. Mrs. Wu was a little confused for a moment, and she wanted to ask more questions. And Sun had already leaned into her ear and said, Madam, is the Taoist master talking about Broken Gold Beach? Princess Kangal of Broken Golden Beach is well known to everyone. Blessed people. I heard that since she was born, there have been many happy events in the family, and the family has been prosperous and prosperous. The most important thing is that all the men who know her, whether old or young, love her very much. No one else will tell you, even the emperor loves the princess very much, even better than the third princess. Mrs. Wu was like a enlightenment, suddenly realized, and the more she thought about it, the more it made sense. Think about the holy relatives of the Li family, they are even better than their serious relatives like the Wu family. That Prince Xinting was cold and indifferent to everyone, but he loved Princess Kangal like a ball in his eyes. One by one, added together, Mrs. Wu was extremely certain that Princess Kangal was the one who robbed her daughter of her good fortune. Lao Tao didn't say anything anymore. He stood up and left, as if he didn't want to get involved anymore. But how could Mrs. Wu let him go without bothering to face him? Taoist priest, if you have a kind heart, how can you save the moon since it is covered by dark clouds? How can we regain the queen's good fortune, and how can we make the queen pregnant? The old Taoist wanted to leave but couldn't, so he had no choice but to smile bitterly. In the end, he also broke the pot and said, what happened today is really a disaster for the old Taoist, that's all, that's all. He took a deep breath and said, if you want to regain your luck, take a bowl of the heart blood of the blessed girl and drink it directly. Before the last word could be heard, there was a loud noise and half of the grass pavilion collapsed. Mother Sun screamed and protected Mrs. Wu under her body, completely ignoring the rotten grass she fell on. The two maids outside the pavilion were also so frightened that they lay on the ground with their heads in their hands, screaming at the top of their lungs. I don't know how long it took, but the steward and the nurse who went out to look for water came back, opened the grass pavilion, and rescued Mrs. Wu and Grandma Sun. The master and servants were all in shock, their faces turned pale with fright. After finally regaining some composure, Mrs. Wu remembered the old Taoist and hurriedly shouted, quick, let's see how the Taoist master is doing. Mama Sun crawled into the pavilion on her hands and knees, and after a while she took a whisk and ran out. The whisk seemed to have been burned by fire, only half of it was left, and it was even stained with some blood. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 780. Chapter 780. Take a bowl of blood. Mother Sun showed it to her master and whispered, Madam, did the Taoist priest reveal the secret and was struck by lightning? Mrs. Wu also guessed this and felt slightly guilty. If she hadn't kept asking and forcing him, this old man wouldn't be like this. Let's go down the mountain quickly, go back quickly. Mrs. Wu ignored her embarrassment and hurried away after calling everyone. Afraid that another thunderstorm would strike her down too. The master and the servant finally got into the carriage and hurried back to the new capital. After walking for more than half an hour, Mrs. Wu finally felt at ease. The more she thought about it, the more excited she became. Not wanting to delay for a moment, she directly ordered the coachman to go to the gate of the palace and handed over a sign asking to see the queen. The queen's mother wants to see the queen, who dares to stop her? So, within a short while, Mrs. Wu was sitting in Cunning Palace drinking tea to calm down her shock. The queen saw that her mother's clothes were a little messy and her expression was not right, so she asked, "Mother, where are you coming from? Did you encounter someone on the road who gave you a hard time?" "No, no," Mrs. Wu quickly waved her hand, drank the tea in one gulp, and then asked the queen to kick out all the maids and eunuchs. Then she took her daughter's hand and spoke carefully. From the time she met the old on the mountain to the time she asked the old for advice, she never missed a word. At the end, she lowered her voice and whispered, "No matter how I think about it, I think what the old fairy said makes sense. The Li family was born in a deserted country today, it is even more prosperous than our prince's mansion. It really all depends on that girl. And a few days ago, many people said that that girl did have the ability to turn into good fortune in times of adversity, and that all the dangerous things she encountered turned out to be safe in the end. If I hadn't robbed you of the queen's good fortune, she, a girl from a small peasant family, would have died in the Northland long ago. How could she be so favored by so many people?" The queen frowned, thinking of Princess Kangol. She was not happy either. The third princess is the emperor's biological daughter, but in terms of favor, she must be ranked second to Princess Kangol. Seriously, Princess Kangol had a fight with the third princess a few years ago, and she was angry and locked up Princess Kangol for a while. After the emperor scolded her severely, it seemed that he no longer wanted to see her. Is it really this little girl who robbed her of her luck? The more she thought about it, the more she felt a headache, so she called the maid outside the door and asked for a bowl of ginseng soup. The palace maids are not the two she usually trusts, but they are still familiar. Perhaps in order to please her master, she whispered, "Mother, your headache has improved a lot in the past few days. Why did you do it again in the past 2 days? I'll call the imperial doctor to ask you for a safe pulse, right?" Before the queen could respond, an idea flashed in Mrs. Wu's mind. She raised her hand to press down the queen's ginseng tea and asked a few questions. The queen was confused, but she still responded carefully. Mrs. Wu immediately chased the palace maid away, and then said, "Silly girl, you don't know many things in the palace. A few days ago, Princess Kangol fell ill. She was very ill and almost died. But I heard that the emperor rewarded her with a century-old ginseng, and she recovered recently. Think carefully, did you feel comfortable all over during the time when she was ill? In the past few days, she has recovered, but have you started to have a headache again?" The queen squinted her eyes, looked at it carefully, and her expression changed. If she only believed 5 points of what her mother said about the old man just now, then she believed 8 points now. She couldn't help but ask, "Has mother ever asked the old Taoist how to get back her luck?" "Of course I asked." Mrs. Wu looked a little complicated and lowered her voice. "The old Taoist said, take a bowl of Princess Kangol's heart blood. After you take it, you will regain your luck and be pregnant and have children soon." A heartache. The queen was so shocked that she spilled the ginseng tea in her hand. "Mother, did the Taoist really say that? He wanted to take Princess Kangol's life." Of course Mrs. Wu knew it, so she was a little uneasy. "That's what the Taoist said, and he was struck by lightning after he said it. I don't know where the person went, leaving only a whisk stained with blood. Su revealed the secret and was punished by God. Even the pavilion we were sitting on collapsed, almost killing me too." The queen stabilized her mind, walked around the ground a few times and said, "Mother, you go back first. I want to test the truth of this matter. Otherwise there will be trouble, not to mention that the Li family and the Marquis of Zinting will not let it go, and the emperor will be even more annoyed with me. Okay, you have to be careful. If you need help from home, just send someone to tell her." Mrs. Wu was also frightened today and quickly stood up to leave. The queen ordered, "Mother, don't talk to anyone about today's events, not even your father. And those servants must also keep their mouths shut. Don't worry, I will definitely make arrangements. Mrs. Wu agreed, and then left the palace. The emperor walked countless times in the palace and looked up to see that the sun was already setting in the west. Then she became heartbroken and called the maid in, giving detailed instructions for a long time. In the yard of Li's family in Broken Gold Beach, the old lady looked good because she had been around the city. Go home and see Xing and Yui are playing, and she also made fun for a while. Li Zhensheng missed my mother and came back early, and was happy to see her. When she sat down, he started talking to her. Yuan will be full moon soon. The birth and cleaning are all in the old house. Why do we have to set up a few tables at the Earl's mansion to entertain relatives and friends during the full moon? It's not that the family is coveting those gifts, it's actually that such an occasion is an opportunity for various wealthy families to interact with each other. Old Mrs. Li is no longer a householder now, and her daughter-in-law and grandson-in-law take care of all the big and small things at home. So, she called Tao Hongying, Zhao Yuru, and Wen Juan to come over to discuss. Wan'er also called Chengxiu to listen, and then went back to tell Wan'er. Tao Hongying had previously made up her mind to go out more often and not stay at home all the time. At this moment, she accepted the errand and said, "Mom, leave this matter to me. Of course, sister-in-law San and Wenwan will also help. If there is anyone unfamiliar, I will ask Mrs. Wen to give some guidance." Mrs. Li nodded and responded, "Okay, don't worry, just try your best. Everyone knows that our family comes from a small farming family. If we manage it well, everyone will be surprised. If we can't handle it, no one will joke." Wenjuan couldn't help but laugh and said, "Grandma said that, it seems that our family's background is quite advantageous." Everyone also laughed, and the matter was settled at this point. Jiyan changed her clothes and came out, but before she knew what was going on, she was caught by my mother, and they were thinking about the banquet menu together. Jiyan certainly won't be stumped, and the delicious food in his mind is all at his fingertips. Even, she was going to prepare a big cake for little kid Yuan. Everyone started to make suggestions one after another, and it was very lively for a while. At this time, Shui Ling suddenly ran in from outside, shouting with surprise on his face. "Princess! Someone came from the palace and said that the queen has a reward. Is there any reward for the queen?" Everyone was stunned when they heard this. The queen is not very friendly to the Li family. What kind of madness are you doing today? 4 updates and 8,000 words. Wawa is awesome, it's really great. It's the last day of this month, so hurry up and vote for your must-reads. Don't forget to give us some good reviews and 5-star reviews. End of this chapter.